Most of us are pretty comfortable nowadays. For example, while my ancestors might have had to worry about fending off bears and finding their next meal, often my biggest concern on a daily basis is picking what whiskey to drink while I watch other people play Bing Bing Wahoo video games. In turn, many of us actively seek for something to entertain us that's more than just temporary entertainment. Some people amuse themselves with hobbies, some people amuse themselves with their family, and some people amuse themselves by ruining their lives with attempts at polyamory. That said, our modern circumstances have made it pretty hard to be motivated. The slowly failing economy, tied with the overall political instability of current circumstances, makes it pretty hard to be motivated to buy a house, start a family, or pretty much do anything long term. Given this pervasive ennui, some people have decided that they're going to throw caution to the wind. Some people have become so comfortable that they're affirmatively planning to put themselves in danger, just to keep things interesting. There's no better example of this than Reddit's new subreddit VolunteersForUkraine, a grouping of idiots pretending that their pasty weakness will be useful in the fight against Russia. By way of background, Volunteers for Ukraine is a movement that popped up on Reddit in response to the ongoing war in Ukraine. At first glance, the subreddit is, more or less, yet another place to talk about the fights in Ukraine. There are regular news updates, discussions about crowdfunding, and that sort of thing. But as the name suggests, some posters on the Volunteers for Ukraine subreddit purport to be serious. A lot of them at least pretend to be interested in actually going to Ukraine and joining the fight. In other words, a bunch of Redditors that formerly were seemingly uncomfortable with the borders and patriotism are now voluntarily throwing themselves into a fight involving someone else's borders and someone else's patriotism. Now, I'm far from the first person to make fun of Volunteers for Ukraine. The internet is currently blowing up with parodies of the subreddit, making fun of how inept the entire board is. Given all of the trolling going on, it's honestly pretty hard to tell fact from fiction on Volunteers for Ukraine. Between joke posts, scams, and just people LARPing a stalker, it's kinda hard to tell who is actually going to volunteer to be a bullet shield in Kiev, and who isn't.
Each battalion has a specific code name and mission. Battalion 5, raise your hands. You will be the all-important first attack wave, which we will call Operation Human Shield.
Hey, wait a minute!
Now keep in mind, Operation Human Shield will suffer heavy losses. Battalion 14... Right, you are Operation Get Behind the Darkies. You will follow Battalion 5 here, and try not to get killed, for God's sake. Are there any questions, men?
All the same, the basic concept of Volunteers for Ukraine is ripe for criticism. Any rational analysis of the situation counsels for not going to fight in Ukraine. Allow me to provide some reasons. First, many of the posters in the Volunteers for Ukraine subreddit seem to wildly misunderstand the nature of the battle in Ukraine in the first place. Some examples, not all of which are likely to be real, there are an uncomfortable amount of posts analogizing a real-life war to stupid childish nonsense like Marvel movies and Harry Potter. Some people seem to think that Arma 3 or Squad will teach them real-life combat tactics, whereas others seem to think that 3D printed parts will be of some use. Some people seem to think that they're ready to assist in non-combat roles despite seemingly not speaking a word of Ukrainian or Russian. One dude wanted to bring his pet turtle, whereas another wanted to bring his figures and his plushies. You know, helpful Battlefront stuff. Others seem to think that posting a selfie in some way is representative of their willingness to fight in Ukraine. In other words, all of these people seem to think that, despite the fact that Ukraine has 44 million people already, their noodly arms and their easily offended personalities are desperately needed in the fight against Russia. Second, it's pretty clear that volunteering for war in Ukraine could get you in a lot of legal trouble. Many countries have made it clear that they are absolutely not cool with their citizens going all soldier of fortune in Ukraine. This stands to reason. After all, if Ethan the idiot American gets captured in Ukraine trying to pretend to be a Call of Duty character, the US Embassy might feel an obligation to try to secure his release. In other words, a helpful American citizen could quickly become a prisoner of war used during negotiations between the countries. This isn't even getting into the simple fact that Russia is openly threatening to treat volunteers in Ukraine as mercenaries rather than combatants under the Geneva Convention. Even if they're legally wrong, and they almost certainly are, it signals Russian willingness to make an example of anyone who volunteers to help Ukraine. Third, a lot of the posters are getting scammed, such that it's not even clear that you could trust anyone trying to give you advice or get into the country. Case in point, crowdfunding seems to now be banned on Volunteers for Ukraine. In no small part because many folks discovered that posters would donate to nearly anything that purported to be a Get to Ukraine effort. These scams seem to be all more or less the same thing. Someone pretends to be planning to go to Ukraine and begs for money and or supplies, then disappears after having put in near zero effort to actually get to Ukraine. Moreover, those purporting to provide helpful advice are, at best, random internet users. It seems manifestly stupid to trust some random Redditor with advice that could involve your safety in a foreign war, even if they totally promise you that they are a cool Navy SEAL with 3,000 years of experience. Of course, this is far from unique to Volunteers for Ukraine. The Ukraine situation in general has invited a lot of armchair experts and scamming across the board. Fourth, and arguably the biggest reason, even assuming anyone did get into Ukraine to fight, war is hell. It's not Call of Duty, or one of those terrible Chinese war movies where Chinese soldiers never get shot.
See? Are you convinced?
Even trained soldiers die for stupid reasons all the time. Anyone willingly exposing themselves to that sort of risk is, in essence, asking to die a stupid, painful, and meaningless death. This isn't even getting into the fact that foreign involvement in Ukraine could make things worse for a variety of reasons. There's no better example of this than recent videos that emerged purportedly showing a number of dead Americans in a school in Ukraine. To summarize, rumors suggested that this particular school was attacked by the Russians after an American posted a selfie in the school that happened to be full of soldiers and put it online. In other words, the allegations were that an American selfie tipped off Russians to the presence of soldiers in a school. Now, the likelihood of this being true is extremely low, in no small part due to the fact that the interior of the school in the selfie is different from that in the video. That said, it's nonetheless a very real risk that American involvement could put others at risk. After all, Russian soldiers' use of Tinder is already tipping off their troop positions. There's a very big likelihood that nerd use of Reddit to talk about activity in Ukraine could harm Ukrainian OPSEC. Turning back to the bigger point, I think Volunteers for Ukraine is popular in no small part due to the ennui of modern society. Many people have argued that some involved in Volunteers for Ukraine have a death wish. The argument goes like this. There are some folks who like the idea of throwing themselves at war, in essence allowing others to kill them rather than committing the act themselves. Hilariously, this has been used as an argument to get the Volunteers from Ukraine subreddit banned, as it technically violates Reddit's policy against self-harm. I don't disbelieve the idea that Volunteers for Ukraine is some sort of suicidal subreddit, but I do think there's more going on here. As I indicated earlier, modern life is comfortable but bland. Thanks to modern circumstances, a lot of us are stuck in an ongoing loop of work, consumption, and sleep. It's comfortable, but boring. In contrast, war is arguably kind of simple. You try to live, try to survive, and try to kill the other guy. Stupid social issues like YouTuber drama stops being quite as important. In this way, I can somewhat empathize with folks wanting to go fight in Ukraine. As terminally stupid and naive as the plan is, I understand the desire to want to be part of something bigger than a crummy 9-to-5 job in the middle of nowhere. All the same, there are better ways to fight this ennui. You don't have to face down Russian bullets to make your life better. Go back to school, pick up a hobby, or even just try to make new friends. It's way safer. Thank you very much for watching this video. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts, especially if you're some idiot Redditor currently watching this video from Starlink and some bunker in Kiev.